taking you back to one of our leading stories. There are growing calls for police to ensure justice for the 18 slain family members who were killed in a mass shooting over the weekend. President Cyril Ramaphosa is calling for resources to be made available to bring those responsible to book. For more on the police's ability to tackle crime in rural areas such as Lusikisiki, we speak now to Nelson Mandela University's Mahlubandile Ntontela. Mr. Ntontela, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with what appears to be the dissatisfaction from the community of Lusikisiki. I think one interview after the other from our own colleagues on this channel who are on the ground in Lusikisiki, without fail, every person they've interviewed thus far are saying the police are simply not the people to be relied upon when times of trouble come. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, good evening to you, Toli, and thank you for the invite. What I can say is that that concern is not far-fetched, because if you look at the history of the mass shootings around Mthatha in the previous years, the Biki areas and the others, you would notice that it's mainly in the remote areas. Now, that is very important to note, because then there is not much resources allocated to those areas in terms of SAPS, community services, emergency services, and because of their remoteness from the CBD, which is in Mthatha, it makes it difficult for police to patrol in those areas, unlike in the urban areas. And for that reason, then, it makes it difficult for anyone to be a reliable witness when a crime of this magnitude is committed, because people there, because of the remoteness and the setup of the rural areas, you have one house in one area and the other in the other. And unfortunately, our criminal justice system, until to this day, still relies heavily on the eyewitnesses.
Yeah.
So that is not far-fetched. That is not far-fetched, their concerns. And the other aspect, the other issue perhaps, is that you would notice that in these murders or in these incidences of similar nature, you notice that the perpetrators are making sure that they eliminate as much as possible of witnesses, because they know that should they be caught, the criminal justice system will make it difficult for them either to get bail, and if they are convicted, to be released anytime soon because of the minimum sentences and the like.
I'd like for us to listen to, sorry, sir, let's just listen for one moment to a community member in Lusikisiki, and this is them expressing concern around their safety. We'll pick up after this. Please listen on.
People of this village, they are in shock. They are in position of they clothe themselves. Within 5 o'clock, you see them, they're running away from the street. Not sure what is happening, because even the system of justice is not doing anything about this. I think by now they'll be adding some more resources to find the killing, so that this violence that you are seeing, this shooting you are seeing, it actually will decrease. But we are seeing that it's escalating than decreasing.
There is a community member suggesting that in Lusikisiki, the people there almost have decided that by 5 o'clock, there's a curfew. No one should be outdoors. And this is something that they are doing voluntarily, simply because they are afraid for their lives. Again, you are going to have very high-profile delegations from government descending to Lusikisiki. The president's message tonight is that of a reassurance that resources will be deployed to Lusikisiki. Does it have to wait for incidents such as these for there to be action? Because that community has been experiencing violent crime, gender-based violence also is being spoken about very strongly. Why is it that it has to wait for a massacre for any action to be taken?
You know, Polly, this points to a fact that perhaps the law enforcement agency, the systems that have been set up in the criminal justice system to combat crime, including by the SAPS and other affiliates, it needs a review. Because every time there's a mass killing, we hear resources being deployed. And the question is, why is there no strategic discussions on how do we prevent this? How do we put foot soldiers there that will be our ears and eyes on the streets to hear them before they occur? Because remember, in the SAPS, they have a setup of police informers, for an example, where they would have in each community people that are paid to make sure that they are the eyes and ears for the law enforcement officers, because they cannot always be everywhere and with everyone. But now we are seeing a trend. Every time something happens, there is a reactive action where the police go there, and it cannot continue like that, because remember, these crimes are not crimes of chance. This is organized crime. And what these people do, the perpetrators, that is, they sit down and they plan. We hear from the news outlets that there was going to be a traditional ceremony of taking away the mourning that had happened because of one of the mothers was murdered in the previous year. So that period was ending, which means then the perpetrators knew that there would be a lot of people gathered in two homesteads. And for that, they sat down and clearly from their actions, they planned. And I heard the previous speaker that you heard here that even the caliber of firearms used is not just my 9mm and the target. So it tells you that these are people that are trained professionals and they are not chance takers. That means then you would need a strategic move from all stakeholders to say we're going to have the intelligence, we're going to have the SAPS, we're going to have specialists in SIU and the others that will sit down and say, how do we combat then this organized crime, where, especially in areas that is prevalent? Because surely by now, this, like I said previously, it's not starting now. It's happened in the previous year in Biki village, near Mthatha. It's happened in Lupondo, if I'm not mistaken, again in 2023. So by now, the police should have said, let's sit down to make sure that this does not occur in the future. Yeah. What strategic moves are we implementing in those areas so that we have eyes and ears? And the other very important aspect that the community member mentioned today is that at 5 p.m., we are going to our houses. That is for two reasons. One, I make sure that by the time these offenses occur, I'm not there to witness them because I may be the next target. And the other thing is that I don't want to be caught in the crossfire. And the only way then that can happen is when the perpetrators instill fear in the communities, because they know that if they instill that fear, they cannot then be willing participants when they're called by the criminal justice system to come and testify. Yeah. Because they will say, I've not seen anything and I was in my house by 5 p.m. as per standard practice. Where does that put the affected communities? It puts them in a situation where crimes perpetuate and they are not resolved, even though the perpetrators keep getting arrested.
Very briefly on this next question, Mahlubandile. The police, again, I'm pressing on this issue of police effectiveness, specifically in Lusikisiki. One of the community members this afternoon talking to my colleague, suggesting that the police officers will respond depending on whether or not they know this person calling them or they know the family that is calling for their assistance. What does that suggest about police officers possibly being complicit, not in a sense that they are perpetrators of this crime, we don't know that right now, but complicit in a sense that they may conduct their work depending on who is calling out for their help. Is it not standard practice in the police service that if you're a police officer born in Lusikisiki, you can't be a police in the same area that you were born? I think it is to try and avoid situations where the police do their work depending on whether or not they are familiar with you. If they're not, well, sorry for you. I don't know if I'm clumsy with this way of structuring a question, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at.
I fully understand, Toli. That comment speaks to the fact that the community has lost faith in the criminal justice system, including the members of the SAPS. And they probably speaking from something that they've previously experienced in the minor offenses like stock theft, depending on whose family. Is it a well-known family whose stock has been stolen in large numbers, and similar incidences. And they've picked up that pattern that, oh, if then it's my livestock that has been stolen, there's nothing's going to be done. But if it's another well-known family whose livestock has been stolen, there will be a swift response to it. So the community have lost faith in the SAPS. And now, I was shocked in the previous years when I was reading or rather following the crime stats, and I found out that in the Eastern Cape, we've had one of the lowest reports against the conduct of the police. And now, again, it speaks to what the community member was saying, that even if I report it, nothing will be done about it. So what's the use of reporting it? But now the perpetrators are feeding on these perceptions, negative perceptions, to commit the crime and continue getting away with it, because they know this is how the communities feel, that there's not going to be much. And again, it may also speak to some of the root causes why we are experiencing in one geographical area around Mthatha, where there are continuous mass killings, that perhaps are they not the perpetrators and the organizers of the killers? Are they not then resorting to self-help after they've given up on the criminal justice system? What if it's one family that have said, listen, my family is not well known, therefore the only resort I have is for me to get killers to go and deal with those people the best way I know how, instead of going to report the crime. So, and on the issue now of police working, it's irrelevant only where you station a police official. There are police directives, there are police instructions, there's the SAPS Act that regulates their conduct. And if they are not held accountable, whether they're in Lusikisiki, born in Lusikisiki, they're still working there, if they're not held accountable and public witness them being held accountable for their actions, that faith in the SAPS will continue declining.
Mahlubandile Ntontela, thank you very much for your time. He is with the University of Nelson Mandela. That's in Port Elizabeth, Gqeberha now.